What if I told you the President of the United States just executed a maneuver so bold it renders the American court system effectively powerless over billions of dollars? We are talking about a move that shields a foreign government we just invaded from the very American companies that won their legal battles in our own halls of justice. This is not some fringe conspiracy theory whispered in dark corners of the internet. This is documented in executive orders and White House press releases happening right now in front of our eyes. It involves a $100 billion deal that is currently reshaping the entire geopolitical map of Latin America. When you peel back the layers of this story, you realize it is not just about oil or the massive wealth buried in the ground. It is about power and a precedent that should strike a chord with every single citizen who believes in the rule of law. Can a commander-in-chief simply override the judicial branch when it becomes an obstacle to his global agenda? The answer lies in a covert operation that unfolded while the world was looking the other way. It started on January 3, 2026 with a raid that shocked the global establishment to its core. Operation Absolute Resolve was not just a small extraction or a surgical strike by a few elite teams. This was the most significant U.S. military intervention in Latin America since the height of the Cold War. Over 150 jets launched from 20 different air bases across the region to converge on Caracas. Their target was Nicolas Maduro, the man who had turned a once prosperous nation into a narco-state for over a decade. The CIA had spent months mapping his safe houses and building full-scale replicas of his compound for training. When the green light finally flashed, specialized teams breached steel-reinforced walls with industrial blow torches in a matter of minutes. The entire operation from the first boot on the ground to Maduro in handcuffs took less than half an hour. By sunrise, the Venezuelan government had collapsed and Maduro was on a plane heading toward American justice. His Vice President Delcy Rodriguez immediately pivoted and declared her intention to cooperate fully with Washington. It was a clear signal that Venezuela was finally open for business under American terms. But the military operation was only the beginning of a much more complex and controversial chapter in American history. Just 5 days later, President Trump announced a staggering $100 billion investment plan for the Venezuelan energy sector. This is the largest single foreign investment commitment in the history of that nation. The deal involves rebuilding rotting infrastructure and pipelines that have been neglected for decades under socialist mismanagement. If you want to stay ahead of how these massive power moves affect your future, make sure to comment your thoughts below and subscribe to the channel right now for more deep dives into the stories the mainstream media won't touch. This investment is framed as a massive win for American energy independence and national security. By securing the largest proven crude reserves on the planet, we are effectively ending our reliance on volatile Middle Eastern producers. We are also kicking out the Chinese and Russian influence that has been festering in our own hemisphere for too long. On the surface, it looks like a masterstroke of diplomacy backed by overwhelming military force. But behind the scenes, the president was met with a wall of resistance from the very companies he needed. ExxonMobil and ConocoPhillips have a long memory and even longer lists of grievances against the Venezuelan state. Back in 2007, Hugo Chavez expropriated their assets and seized billions of dollars worth of equipment and infrastructure. These companies did not just walk away, they fought and won massive arbitration awards in international and American courts. They are owed billions, and they were not about to invest another dime until they were paid what they were legally promised. This created a massive friction point between the White House and the titans of American industry. On January 10, the president signed an executive order that effectively declared a national emergency to bypass these legal hurdles. This order blocks U.S. courts from seizing any Venezuelan oil revenues held in U.S. Treasury accounts. In simple terms, the president has erected a legal shield around the money to protect it from American creditors. He is arguing that national security interests outweigh the private property rights of these massive corporations. This is a move that has legal scholars and constitutional experts scrambling to find a precedent. The move to shield Venezuelan assets from our own courts has set off a firestorm in the boardrooms of Irving and Houston. When President Trump met with oil executives on January 9, the tension in the room was reportedly thick enough to cut with a knife. The CEO of ExxonMobil did not mince words when he told the president that Venezuela remains uninvestable without fundamental reforms and immediate compensation. You cannot expect American shareholders to pour billions into a nation that has a documented track record of seizing assets without a single cent of payment. This is about the sanctity of contract, which is a bedrock principle of the American economic system. If property rights are negotiable based on the political whims of the day, then no rational investor can trust the environment we are trying to build. Exxon is standing on a principle that has cost them nearly 20 years of legal battles and billions in lost revenue. They are joined by ConocoPhillips, which holds a massive $8 billion judgment that has been gathering dust for years. These companies are not just being stubborn, they are defending the idea that the law must mean something regardless of who is in the White House. But while Exxon and Conoco were fighting in court, another American giant was playing a much longer and riskier game. Chevron decided to stay in Venezuela back in 2007 when Hugo Chavez issued his ultimatum to the global oil industry. They accepted minority stakes in joint ventures with the state-owned PDVSA and endured years of economic collapse and hyperinflation. While their competitors were filing lawsuits, Chevron was maintaining relationships and keeping their infrastructure on the ground functional. Now that the smoke has cleared from Operation Absolute Resolve, Chevron is positioned to be the primary beneficiary of this new $100 billion era. They do not have the massive outstanding arbitration claims that are currently clogging up the legal system. The president has made this advantage explicit by suggesting that companies like Exxon might be shut out entirely unless they drop their demands. This is an unprecedented level of government pressure on private American firms to abandon legitimate legal victories. It essentially creates a two-tier system where those who cooperated with a hostile regime are rewarded while those who stood for their rights are penalized. If you believe that American companies should always have their rights protected by their own government, then you need to comment and subscribe to this channel right now. We need your voice in this conversation as we track how this decision changes the future of American business abroad. This situation forces us to look at the very structure of our government and the separation of powers defined in the Constitution. The executive branch is tasked with enforcing the laws, while the judicial branch is meant to resolve disputes and interpret those laws. When a president declares that valid court judgments no longer apply to a specific set of funds, he is effectively silencing the third branch of government. Trump's executive order does not magically make the billions owed to Exxon or Conoco disappear from the books. It simply removes the enforcement mechanism that allows them to collect what a judge has already ruled is theirs. Legal scholars are now asking if the International Emergency Economic Powers Act was ever intended to be used in this specific way. That law was designed to freeze the assets of terrorist or hostile foreign actors to protect American interests. Using it to shield a foreign government from American companies with valid claims is a novel and frankly disturbing interpretation of executive authority. If a president can shield Venezuelan money today, what stops a future administration from doing the same for any other country? This power could easily be used to favor certain political allies or punish corporate enemies under the vague guise of national security. We are watching a high-stakes gamble where the rule of law is being traded for a geopolitical checkmate in the Western Hemisphere. From a strategic standpoint, the logic is hard to ignore because Venezuela sits on more oil than Saudi Arabia or Russia combined. For years we have watched China and Russia move in to fill the vacuum left by our sanctions and diplomatic isolation. Bringing Venezuela back into the American fold is a massive win that could stabilize the entire region and lower energy costs for every American family. But the question we have to ask is whether that win is worth the cost of undermining our own judicial process. The speed of these events has left Congress and the public struggling to keep up with the sheer scale of the change. In just 10 days we saw a military invasion and the capture of a head of state, followed by a massive investment deal and a legal blockade. This level of rapid executive action without significant congressional oversight is what has constitutional experts sounding the alarm bells. It sets a precedent where the president can act as judge, jury, and dealmaker all at the same time. While we all want a strong and secure America, we must ensure that our strength is rooted in the laws that make us unique. While the lawyers in Washington argue over executive orders and oil revenues, A much darker drama is unfolding in a high-security federal courtroom. Nicolas Maduro, the man who once held absolute power over millions, is now just another defendant in the American justice system. Federal prosecutors are currently laying out a massive case that alleges he turned an entire nation into a criminal enterprise for personal gain. This trial is not just about one man, but about exposing the rot of narco-terrorism that has threatened our borders for decades. The evidence includes thousands of hours of intelligence intercepts and testimony from former insiders who saw the corruption firsthand. The charges involve facilitating massive cocaine shipments and protecting brutal drug cartels in exchange for hundreds of millions in kickbacks. This is a direct threat to American families and the safety of our streets, making this trial a matter of vital national interest. However, the legal battle is proving to be just as complex as the military operation that brought him here. Maduro's defense team is already filing motions to dismiss, claiming diplomatic immunity as a former head of state and challenging the legality of the raid itself. They want to turn this into a trial of American foreign policy rather than a trial of criminal conduct. The outcome of this case will send a message to every dictator and drug kingpin in the Western Hemisphere. If we can successfully prosecute a sitting leader for narco-trafficking, it changes the entire calculus of power in our region. It proves that there is nowhere to hide from American justice, no matter how many bodyguards or bunkers you have. But if the case falters due to legal technicalities, it could become a massive embarrassment for the administration and a propaganda win for our enemies. We are effectively putting our own legal system on trial in front of the entire world. As this legal drama plays out, the new interim government in Caracas is moving at lightning speed to normalize relations with Washington. Delcy Rodriguez knows that her political survival depends on the success of the $100 billion investment plan Trump announced. She is currently negotiating the fine print of profit-sharing agreements and regulatory frameworks that will govern American operations in the region. This is a delicate dance because she must show her people that she is not just a puppet of the United States. At the same time, she needs American capital to prevent a complete humanitarian collapse that could spark a new wave of refugees. The stakes for the American taxpayer and our strategic position in the world have never been higher than they are right now. By integrating Venezuela's massive oil reserves into our economic sphere, we are creating a buffer against future energy crises and global instability. We are also sending a clear message to Beijing and Moscow that their influence in our backyard has reached its expiration date. This is about more than just fuel prices, it is about ensuring that the 21st century remains an American century. If you want to support this kind of deep dive reporting on the future of our country, please subscribe to the channel and comment below to join the community. The choice facing companies like ExxonMobil and ConocoPhillips is now a matter of survival and strategy in this new world order. They can continue to fight the executive branch in court, hoping to overturn the order that blocks their access to Venezuelan funds. This strategy could take years and offers no guarantee of success, especially given the broad emergency powers granted to the president. Alternatively, they can come to the table and negotiate a deal that allows them to participate in the reconstruction of Venezuela. It is a bitter pill to swallow, essentially asking them to forgive billions in debt for the chance to make billions more in the future. The president is betting that the lure of the world's largest oil reserves will eventually outweigh the desire for legal retribution. He wants a united front of American energy giants working together to secure our hemisphere's resources for the next 50 years. This America-first approach to energy and diplomacy is bold, but it leaves many questions about the long-term health of our institutions. If we sacrifice the rule of law for a strategic victory today, what kind of foundation are we building for the challenges of tomorrow? We must be careful not to become the very thing we are trying to protect ourselves against. Looking forward, the success of this entire venture depends on whether Venezuela can actually achieve a stable and democratic transition. The administration is demanding free elections and economic reforms as part of the phase-out of remaining sanctions and the flow of investment. If Rodriguez can deliver on these benchmarks, we could see the most significant economic revival in the history of Latin America. If she fails, We risk being bogged down in another long-term foreign entanglement that drains our resources and complicates our foreign policy. The margin for error is razor-thin, and the eyes of the world are watching our every move. In conclusion, the capture of Nicolas Maduro and the subsequent oil deal represent a turning point in how America exercises its power on the global stage. We are seeing a fusion of military might, economic pressure, and executive authority that is reshuffling the deck of international politics. It is a move designed to secure our energy future and push back against our greatest global rivals in one fell swoop. While the constitutional questions are serious and the corporate fallout is real, the potential rewards for our national security are undeniable. We are witnessing the birth of a new era of American influence in the Western Hemisphere. Whether this era is defined by the rule of law or the rule of the deal is a question that only time will answer. We must hold our leaders accountable to ensure that our strategic wins do not come at the expense of the principles that define us as a nation. The billions of dollars and the millions of barrels of oil are important, but the integrity of our justice system is the real treasure. As we move into this uncertain future, stay tuned to this channel for the latest updates and the hidden details the others miss. Thank you for watching. Make sure to hit that subscribe button, and tell us in the comments what you think about this historic move.